stay right here.
I'm a poet.
And what?
A poet. You know what poet?
Cola?
A poet. P-O-E-T.
Poet. You're the poet?
I'm the poet.
This man is Charles Bukowski, one of the most famous American authors and poets of all time. Over the course of his professional career, he's been the recipient of numerous awards and accolades, and to this day he's often cited as an inspiration by musicians, actors and comedians alike. He is also, by almost all modern metrics, a failure. Bukowski was born the child of two German immigrants to the US, and had a childhood defined by abuse and bullying. At age 18, he barely graduated from high school, and decided to go to university to study journalism, and 2 years later left without graduating. He began writing, without any success, and 2 more years later he was arrested and put in prison for evading military service. He would spend the next several decades working odd jobs, the longest of which was his 10-year stint filing letters at the post office, and it wasn't until 1970, at the ripe old age of 50 years old, that he was able to leave the post office and dedicate himself full-time to writing, and finally have his happily ever after. Bukowski, to me, is a model example of someone who conquered the fear of failure. In fact, he, for most of his life, relentlessly fought it. But mysteriously enough, what advice did he leave for the next generation? What guidance did he give to the youth struggling against adversity and staring in the face of doubt and failure? Don't try. And at first it seems almost paradoxical that a man who spent his whole life working quite as hard as Bukowski did would give this advice, but I've spent some time thinking about it, and I think he figured out something that most of us never do. I think he revealed the secret to dealing with failure, and I've been trying to apply it in my own life. Okay, let's chat about failure, once I've got this in focus. There we go. So, over the course of my life, I have tried and failed at a lot of different things. My last attempt at having a proper career didn't last more than a few months. I haven't figured out what I want to do with my life, for the most part, and I don't think I will for a while. Each and every time I've faced failure in my life, I've been absolutely terrified. The thought of putting hours of work into something and it not paying off is paralysing to me, and I would have done anything to avoid it. I often feel like, for most of my life, I've not really tried to succeed at things. I've just been trying not to fail. And I think this is what Bukowski was getting at. The fear of failure so often isn't a fear of actually failing. It's a fear of trying and not getting what you want. Of there being this gap between your expectations and reality, and the two drifting ever further apart. And that's why Bukowski tells us not to try, to just do instead. To reframe our goals in terms of taking action towards the objective, rather than achieving the outcome itself. But I think there are really good reasons why humans do this, so let me explain. I use my brain. I don't let my brain use me. Okay, so life is so often presented as this straight line through time. You're born, you grow up, you do some shit for about 60 years and then you die, right? But I don't think that's quite accurate. You see, every decision we make, from what time you set your alarm to what you have for dinner in the evening, is one of an infinity of choices. Every day we're faced with an infinity of choices, each with an infinity of consequences, and the best thing we can really do is roll the dice, see where it lands, and trust that we have the skills to take the next step. And in my experience at least, the fear of failure so often stems from trying to figure things out to this ridiculous degree. Trying to figure out step 99 before you've even taken step 1. Instead, give yourself permission to take the next step and assess whether it was the right one. And over time, the correct path carves itself out for you. Okay, so if you are a brain surgeon or you build bridges for a living, then ignore everything I'm saying. You should probably be quite scared of failure. But I think for the rest of us, the stakes are much lower. Humans are naturally risk averse. We're more scared of losses than we are of gains. As the psychologist Daniel Kahneman puts it, for most people, the fear of losing $100 is more intense than the pleasure of gaining $150. And this is one of the reasons we're so terrified of failure. It represents a perceived loss to us, and that's just something that we aren't ready to handle. Most people simply haven't built up this tolerance for risk. And so I'm at least trying to welcome more uncertainty and doubt into my life, and accepting that I have the skills and the tools to deal with failure as I have done before. And if you've learned to walk or you've learned to speak, then you've dealt with failure as well, and you too have the tools to do it. I'm quickly realizing the tricks that your brain plays on itself. For example, I was really scared of starting this entire project. I was mainly worried about things like judgment and the like. But I've since come to realize that the only thing at stake was my pride. And the reward, the sense of growth and achievement I feel every time I do this is unimaginable. And so many of those fears just disappear when I give myself permission to take the first step and do something uncertain. And I'm not going to pretend that this idea is going to give you everything you want in life and you're bound to make it in whatever you try. See, some people do everything right and life just still doesn't work out for them. But it might make you a little bit more comfortable in the face of failure. I want to be good at a lot of things. I want to be good at this thing, I want to be good at languages, and I want to be a kind and thoughtful person. And I'm not as good as I want to be at any of those things right now. But I'm giving myself permission to take the next step. I'm going to do the actions that allow me to achieve those goals. And if in the future I change my mind or things go a different way, then maybe I've failed, who knows? But at least I'll have lived a more interesting life for it. What do you think? Right, so I'm sat here editing the video and I realised that it wouldn't be complete without a few failures of my own. So I'm going to include a little compilation of me messing up many times for your enjoyment. Have a nice one. I've now realised that the only thing from trying to figure things out and in my experience at least, the fear of failure so often stems from trying to figure things. Bukowski tells us to not try, to just do instead, to reframe our objectives in terms of taking. Fear of failure so often stems from trying to figure things out too much, from trying to have step 99 figured out before you finish step 1.